Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we're going to be checking out a piece from the multidisciplinary artist known as Diana de Avila. This episode, we're going to be talking about this incredible sense of energy here. We're going to be breaking down analytical cubism, and we're also going to talk about the incredible influences of Kandinsky. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, you're met with quite this grand scene here. It is a very lively first impression. You have an incredibly dynamic color palette. There's just so much you could really talk about in that first impression. And so in the realm of color, you really have almost every color of the rainbow, right? You do have red, you have greens, you have blues, you have purples, you even have those darker colors such as black and kind of these mixing tones as well. All in all, it gives you a very lively first impression, and of course that diverse color palette also contributes to a sense of visual energy as well. And so what you'll notice is also a sense of texture in this composition here. So we see a texture even very micro, very specific there, but there is also a texture with, say, the kind of roiling wisp of the forms, as well as this there's really no other words for it. It is a rough texture within that as well, and you see that within the forms for sure. So all in all, that does also contribute to that sense of energy. And so you also see these kind of constant curves within the work at hand, right? You have curves there, you have curves here, curves all throughout the spatial composition also contributes to that sense of energy. So already, we talked about an incredibly dynamic color palette. We talked about that incredible sense of energy, and then the presence of all these curved lines. So all in all, those three elements, just an incredible sense of motion here. So it does create quite a chaotic spatial composition. Whenever you look at this, you're going to feel quite invigorated. Gets the heart racing. It's certainly going to awaken you, whether it's the intensity of light, color, texture, just so many elements working here for sure. And so there also is this sense of kind of surrealism within the work at hand. So we do have a little bit of objective depiction, say with kind of a golf putt, if you will. But regardless of that, there is this feeling of surrealism. It feels as if there's this sense of subjectivity to the work at hand. Someone might look at this and see, a ball. Someone might even, personally, I looked at that and it reminded me of the old Windows symbol. There's so many things that someone might look at this and certainly see that is quite indicative of surrealism, but it's also indicative of, say, the subjective nature of that as well. And so this is titled Putt-Putt with Kandinsky, and Kandinsky is actually a really famous artist from around the 1910s. We're going to be looking at that here in a second, but very important. And so Putt-Putt with Kandinsky, right? We have this sense, we have what appears to be these balls, what we think might be a golf putt there. And then you have just that sense of energy as well. This might be, just flying across the spatial composition, giving us that visual energy. And so Kandinsky is very important. He is largely regarded as the first one who really tried to create kind of non-objective forms. So that's what I have right here. Let me move this just a little bit so we can see this best. And so he has been credited with, for example, the Almanac for the Blue Rider Group, if you guys know what I'm talking about, all very important, and he's made some immense contributions to the scene. And so what's important to note is he created kind of pure abstraction, which means non-objectivity. So objectivity would be kind of looking at this, for example, we see what appears to be a golf putt, so that could be connected to something real. So Kandinsky is largely regarded as pushing the envelope or pushing the frontier on non-objective forms. So, for example, on this composition, there's some pieces where he does show some objectivity, and then there's other pieces where it just devolves into absolute madness. So what's also important to note is music. So Kandinsky was incredibly inspired by music. He used that, even in his composition series, he wanted that to kind of have a blank slate. He didn't want people to look at that and have the title kind of influencing their interpretation of the work. So really, really interesting as well. And so with this in mind, there also is, he's working right around the time of Cubism as well. So I brought in a piece. This is actually what we would call Analytical Cubism. And so Analytical Cubism, there's largely, you normally see lots of geometric shapes, but Analytical Cubism tends to be quite drained of color, especially in its early editions. So what I see here is this mix of course, you have Kandinsky, and then you also have this sense of Cubism where this grid is shifted. We're seeing all these different perspectives within the work at hand. Kind of reminds of that, but of course, a much more vibrant version of that Analytical Cubism. So wanted to just mention that real quick. And of course, we have the Kandinsky work right next to us. Of course, you see that incredible sense of color, that incredible sense of energy, the incredible, vibrancy of color. There's so many things you can draw from work to work. Of course, Kandinsky on the left and Diana's on the right here. So really, really nice work. Of course, just an amazing contributions coming from Kandinsky. We certainly see the echoes all the way till today right here. So really nice work there. The artist kind of does this work as a sense of exploration, and I actually have a quote from the original artist here. So she describes this work as a piece where the abstraction found its story like a psychonaut mind sailing through dimensions of play. Bats, balls, diamonds, waves, greens, flags. This surrealistic digital painting captures the mind of the explorer. So we see a digital painting here, certainly for sure. And then she describes it as kind of like dimensions of play or kind of exploration in that sense. Really interesting here. Of course, as creators, we're always trying to search for some type of objective form, but with Kandinsky and the work at hand, there really is no objective form. It kind of just devolves into absolute madness. And so with this in mind, there is a sense of exploration. We're exploring the visual frontier. We're bringing that back into kind of solid works such as the one which stands before us now. All very important whenever we're looking at this work. And so what's really interesting is how she describes it as mind sailing, or kind of moving through the space of the mind. That's really interesting as well. So you see kind of this sense of discovery, you know what I mean? Whenever you're creating a work of art, you don't know exactly what you're working with until the final product is created. Then you have that kind of epiphany or that discovery where you have that really polished work standing in front of you. I think that's incredibly important. And so we see the original artist, that's exactly what she's looking at, that kind of sense of the exploration through dimensions of play where the abstraction found its own story. So really nice. It also reminds, I would say, abstract expressionism, where you're kind of finding the process in that exploration. So a nice work, and always a very important to quote to kind of look at that. And so this is a Texpressionist piece. So the Texpressionism page actually curated this work. So Texpressionism at its most literal can be defined as any content of emotion conveyed through a medium of technological expression. So we certainly see that here. She's kind of dealing with the impact, the creation, discovery, certainly really deep tones there. And so that fits into Texpressionism quite nicely. Hope y'all enjoyed. We talked about Kandinsky, the influences of Kandinsky, Expressionism. We talked about Analytical Cubism, this incredible sense of energy, this incredible vibrance of color. There's so many things we talked about. So if y'all enjoyed this work, go check out the original artist. It's going to be Diana de Avila, doing some really good stuff, and I just hope y'all enjoyed today. So hope y'all enjoyed. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see y'all on the next.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.